Good evening, I'm Joe Quigley.
And I'm Paula Hand.
And welcome to Gay Newsbreak, Oklahoma's only gay and lesbian television news program.
Washington, D.C. has become a dangerous place to live if you're a gay man. Another gay man has been murdered in the D.C. area, bringing that total to 11 in the past 11 months. The latest victim was a public health worker who was recently found in his home, his body riddled with bullets. Evidence at the crime scene indicated that the victim must have known his attackers because there was no sign of forced entry. Investigators said that they have found no motive for the killing. According to a recent Washington Blade investigation, 25 gay men have been murdered under similar circumstances since January of 1989. Out of those 25 cases, 9 arrests have been made. 4 of those arrests have led to convictions, and 5 cases are still pending. The FBI has been called in to investigate the murders. The Roman Catholic Church evidently has too much time and too much money on its hands. Instead of using its resources in a more productive manner, the Vatican has renewed its investigation of 2 Washington, D.C. clergy who minister to gays. This is the 4th such investigation conducted by the Vatican against Father Robert Nugent and Sister Janine Gramick. The investigation has been made at the request of Cardinal James Hickey, who wants them both removed as directors of New Ways Ministry, an organization they founded in 1977. The 2 have been the subject of 3 previous church investigations, one in 1977 after they sponsored a Catholic lesbian retreat, in 1981 after they announced plans for a national symposium on homosexuality in the church, and in 1985 after Gramick published an article about the position of Catholic lesbians within the church. Each time, their superiors found their work to be acceptable and in accord with church teachings.
Infiltration of Christian doctrine into public policy by the religious right is a growing reality according to the Massachusetts Civil Rights Group. They point to such groups as the Family Institute and the Colorado-based Focus on the Family as spearheads of the intrusion into Massachusetts public policy debate. A 300-page information pamphlet is available from the Lighthouse Institute exposing the political agenda of such right-wing groups. A copy can be ordered by calling area code 508-650-0192. Boston City Council and its school board may come to blows over condoms. The City Council is threatening an anti-condom ordinance if the school board does not halt efforts to distribute condoms in city schools. The distribution is opposed despite a rule requiring parental consent and a survey whose results show that 1/3 of Boston students are practicing unsafe sex. Recently, leaders of South Carolina's Evangelical Lutheran Church have advised members to make up their own minds about a controversial statement on sexuality. In 1993, the Evangelical Lutheran Church had drafted a statement encouraging churches to bless same-sex marriages and to question conventional attitudes about sexuality. Church members are encouraged to respond directly to their National Council leaders on the first draft of a social statement designed to guide the church on topics ranging from sex education to marriage.
Publishers of free newspapers in Maryland can breathe a bit easier now. Lawmakers in Maryland have recently passed a new law which makes it a punishable offense to take more than 1 copy of free publications in order to prevent other people from reading them. The law came about after the Washington Blade had suffered many months of harassment in which free copies of the newspaper were being stolen from libraries. The repeated thefts of the newspapers were part of some anti-gay activities enacted by members of several local religious organizations who were opposed to the papers being made available in the public libraries. This problem also occurred with a nearby college campus newspaper. 10,000 copies of its newspaper was stolen from distribution stands on the campus. The new law establishes a fine of $500, 60 days in jail, or both, for persons convicted of the newly created category of newspaper theft. The first court case involving a man with AIDS in the Americans with Disabilities Act is about to go to trial. In 1992, 31-year-old Fred Chamron was driving through Toledo, Ohio on his way to Maine. While in Toledo, Charon suffered a reaction to some medication he was taking and sought professional help from a hospital nearby. But the hospital's senior doctor on duty refused to admit Charon to the hospital, telling the other staff members that once you put an AIDS patient in the hospital, it was very hard to get them out. Charon subsequently filed a lawsuit against the physician and the hospital. The U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Ohio issued a ruling saying that the Americans with Disabilities Act applied in the suit.
An Idaho clergyman who opposes a pending statewide anti-gay initiative is concerned that he cannot speak freely on the topic. The pastor claims that the majority of evangelical, Catholic, and Mormon church members support the initiative. He says he has had to sign an agreement with his own congregation that prohibits him from speaking out on the topic except as a private citizen. The law would make it illegal to prohibit discrimination against gays. It also prohibits presenting homosexuality in a positive light by any state employee. The KKK is attempting to clean up its image by visibly picking up trash along Florida's public highways. Putting on the positive face of community service, the KKK has launched a new campaign to both improve its public image and to attract new recruits. The KKK is trying to sugarcoat its message of hate, particularly against blacks and gays, according to a recent CNN television broadcast.
Do you ever think you'd see the day when your very own son or daughter would have their own gay prom? Well, neither did anyone else, but recently more than 100 gay and lesbian couples attended a high school prom sponsored by a school district in Los Angeles. Students attending the prom gave it rave reviews. One young man told the New York Times that he thought the prom was wonderful, and a 16-year-old girl who attended the prom in tux and a tails said that she told the Associated Press that she always wanted to go to the prom, just not in a gown. Now we're going to join Greg and Dr. Larry Prater with our weekly health segment.
Good evening, Oklahoma City. Welcome to another edition of the Gay and Lesbian Health Update. With me tonight is Dr. Larry Prater. Dr. Prater, thank you for joining us once again. I understand that there is a new epidemic in America with tuberculosis.
Yes, TB used to be a major problem in this country among the infectious diseases. Since TB is airborne, just being around people with TB you can catch TB very easily from other people. We had a series of sanitariums around the country, including in Tallahena, Oklahoma, and other places in Oklahoma, to isolate these people. Then drugs were developed which were quite effective against TB, and it was largely wiped out in this country. Recently, though, with all the AIDS cases, there's been a big resurgence of it. There's been some recent studies about this that doctors did think that these were people who had been infected years ago, and then once they got TB, once they got HIV, then their immune system was decreased, and so the TB resurfaced. However, these new studies show that many of these cases are new infections. So there is a big danger of catching TB today, especially if your immune system is compromised.
So what they once believed was just a reoccurrence of people that had tuberculosis. That's not the case anymore. They're tracing the tuberculosis. I understand it can be traced.
Right. They did these studies, the recent studies in both New York and San Francisco, and found that many of these people with TB and HIV are recent infections of TB, and they even found like one person has infected like 17 or 18 people, just that one person themselves. Another one of the problems is that even though the drugs that were in existence for the older form of TB were very effective, many of the TB cases now, the strains, are resistant to these drugs, so it's much harder to cure the TB now that's going on.
Now, I grew up before tuberculosis was widespread. Can you tell the audience just a little bit about what tuberculosis is and how it affects the body?
Well, it's an infection which largely infects the lungs, although it can infect the bones and other areas of the body. One of the big problems was that if a person was not compliant with the medications, then they would remain infective with the TB. And sometimes they had to wear a face mask or be confined by law to these asylums or to their own homes. The treatment is so long, it can be 6 months to a year of taking pills every day, and that's difficult to make people do or to really monitor to make sure they're doing that. It's extremely important nowadays, if you have TB and you're prescribed medications, that you actually take those drugs regularly. in order to control it in yourself and to keep from infecting other people.
Well, that's very interesting to know, and I'm sure that will be very helpful to our audience out there. We would like to thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you once again next week,
Thanks.
okay? Thank you.
Thomas Davis, who is running for a Virginia congressional seat, has removed an inverted triangle from campaign graphics because it could be seen as support for gay rights. The Republican candidate took the action on the insistence of the Fairfax County Republican Party. Davis himself says his record showed he did not support the gay agenda and that the triangle clearly was a meaningless design and also appears on the campaign literature of incumbent Charles Robb and his challenger Oliver North. Democrat Tony Miller, an openly gay man, is running for California's Secretary of State. Neither he nor his political opponents are making an issue of his sexual orientation. Miller has been the acting Secretary of State since February, having previously been Chief Legal Counsel for that office. If he is elected, he would be the first openly gay man to win a statewide office. 4 Tucson, Arizona same-sex couples have decided not to appeal a judge's decision to uphold a Pima County refusal of a marriage license. A Superior Court judge ruled that same-sex marriage is not a court issue, but a legislative one. After consulting the parties in Hawaii's same-sex marriage case, the decision was made not to appeal. Lawyers feel a high court ruling in Arizona might adversely affect the Hawaii case. The Arizona couples intend to file a suit again next year after Hawaii courts rule on their case. In a unique situation, gay and lesbian voters in Rhode Island will have to choose between 2 gay supportive Senate candidates. Both incumbent Republican Senator John Chafee and his challenger, State Representative Linda Kushner, have a strong record of support for the state's gay community. Instead of the usual battle of pro-gay and an anti-gay candidate, the Rhode Island gay community has to choose which of 2 friends would be best for the community and the state.
Turning the tables on anti-gay forces, a group calling itself the Bigot Busters is making some bigots in the Seattle area very nervous. A petitioner seeking signatures for an anti-gay initiative found himself surrounded by a crowd of angry gay citizens. He said he felt suddenly besieged by the gay version of the KKK. Bigot Busters was created by 3 gay groups, Hands Off Washington, Queer Nation, and the Stonewall Committee for Gay and Lesbian Rights. Petition seekers now avoid soliciting citizens in public places such as malls, calling the efforts of the Bigot Busters an interference with their rights. They say to reach out and touch someone, and that's exactly what several long-distance telephone service providers are trying to do. Both AT&T and LDDS, the first and fourth largest providers of long-distance service, have announced plans to attract gay and lesbian customers. LDDS will make a donation to Show Me Equality, a gay civil rights group, for each new customer who requests it. AT&T, though offering no donation, is a sponsor of the Gay Games and has supported equal rights for its gay employees since 1987. 2 other services have tailored their service to gay patrons for quite some time. Community Spirit, a gay-owned company, and Pride Network also offer donations to community organizations of the customer's choice.
A teacher in Fairfax, Virginia has received a letter of reprimand for showing a copy of HBO's The Coming Out of Heidi Leiter in her health class. The story concerns a girl and her lover attending a prom in Manassas, Virginia. A parent complained when her daughter told her about the video and asked questions about sexual orientation. The school board said that the teacher violated a basic school policy which requires teachers to have any outside materials approved before use in the classroom. School officials have said the teacher simply goofed on a policy that has no flexibility. The parent and others claim a letter of reprimand is not enough and are calling for more severe punishment. In a similar situation, according to the Edmond Sun newspaper, an Edmond middle school teacher decided to show his students a video which depicted gays as intelligent, hardworking, religious, and monogamous people engaged in all walks of life and in honorable pursuits. Responding to protests from parents, the school's principal said Neil Cagle, a soccer coach, made 2 mistakes. The film did not tie in with his assigned curriculum, and he did not submit a supplemental curriculum form as required by school rules. While explaining that his intent was merely to show students that gays are people too, Mr. Cagle has apologized for his two mistakes. Despite the apology, some parents are demanding disciplinary actions against the coach for showing the video, which was produced by NBC and hosted by Maria Shriver. In both these cases, the school district's concerns deal with a violation of school policy rather than the contents of the videos. Children's Television Workshop has responded to rumors by declaring that Bert and Ernie are not gay. TV Guide gave CTW a jeer for even honoring the rumor with a response. TV Guide further suggested that Children's Television Workshop address the topic on Sesame Street so children and parents would learn sexual orientation shouldn't really matter. And now we join Greg Blakesley and Judy Crane at the Northwinds Living Center.
Take just a few moments, if you will, and try to imagine what it would be like to give up your job, your home or apartment, and almost all of your belongings. Well, that's what the residents here at the Northwinds Living Center have had to experience. No, this isn't a retirement center. It's a nursing center specializing in AIDS care. I'm here speaking with Judy Crane, owner and administrator of the Northwinds Living Center. Judy, thank you for allowing us to come and interview you.
Welcome.
Can you first of all tell us what the purpose of the Northwinds Living Center is?
The purpose of Northwinds Living Center is to take care of AIDS patients. They were not getting proper care, and so we opened this so that they could get proper care.
Now, in our discussions earlier, you had mentioned to me some things such as you and your husband are currently retired, and that you all just bought this and wanted to do this. Can you fill us in on your thought process that you went through?
Sure. One of the things that we saw, and I saw as I was out in the field, that most AIDS patients were not being taken care of properly in other nursing homes. They weren't wanted there. And so we decided that there needed to be a place where that they could feel loved and have a nice, warm environment and have their friends over and be comfortable to have their friends and family over. So that was the real purpose for putting this here, so that they could have a quality of life.
Now, you mentioned other nursing homes. Does an AIDS patient go to a nursing home that doesn't specialize in AIDS care? And do they feel comfortable doing that, or?
Not really. Most of them do not, because the people that have other nursing homes, and I had another one too, have another one, and the families are uncomfortable because they don't understand the disease of AIDS. So the families are uncomfortable with it, the residents are uncomfortable, and so are a lot of the employees. And mostly they're older residents, and so they don't understand the younger residents. And that was one of the primary factors that we chose to do this one.
Now, we've taken a tour of this earlier, and we talked about how many patients you can handle. Why don't you fill our audience in on that?
Okay. We're licensed for 29 beds, but we decided an exercise program was real important for the residents that live here, so we've donated 2 beds to an exercise room, and we'll have all types of equipment in there, and I think it's going to be real good for them to us not only build up their body with food, but to bring their muscle tone up too, as much as possible, and it helps their quality of life a lot better.
Now, if a patient comes to you and says that I would like to live here, what do they need to do?
Okay, we can take 4 types of patients. We are Medicaid certified already, so if somebody is financially needy, then we can work with the state and they can help with their care and medications. We are being Medicare approved, and that's for the disabled, and Medicare will help pay for their care. We also can take insurance patients because we are considered a certified skilled beds. And then, of course, we can take private pay.
Well, thank you for sharing a little bit of your time with me tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You know, reports say that we will all soon know someone with AIDS. Well, the Living Center here has gotten acquainted with quite a few people with AIDS. On this plaque are some valiant warriors not to be forgotten. Warriors that have called the Living Center their last home. I'm Greg Blakesley reporting for Gay Newsbreak.
The old military ban on gays and lesbians in the service has not been faring well in the courts recently. Still, another court ruled that the military ban on gays and lesbians in the armed services has no rational basis. This ruling came in one of the highest profile cases challenging the military's ban, that of Colonel Margaret Kammermeyer, who was recently reinstated. In hearing the case, a federal court ruled that a person's homosexual orientation is not reliable evidence that he or she will engage in homosexual activity. Kammermeyer was asked about her sexual orientation in April of 1989 during a security check for a top security clearance. She answered honestly, saying that she was indeed a lesbian. In his decision, Judge Thomas Zilli declared the military's policy to be based solely on prejudice and its application to Kammermeyer to be in violation of the constitutional guarantee of equal protection. Kammermeyer's story is the subject of a movie being produced by Hollywood magnate Barbara Streisand, which will star actress Glenn Close as the highly decorated colonel. The military's new policy of don't ask, don't tell is being challenged for the very first time. A military tribunal recommended a California man be discharged from the National Guard because he admitted to being gay. 31-year-old Lieutenant C. Andrew Holmes wrote a letter to his commanding officer in June of 1993 informing him that he is gay. Holmes said he decided to challenge the military's new policy because he is proud of who he is and wants to be judged on his abilities and not on his sexuality. Holmes is challenging the military's right to discharge him on several grounds, including a claim that his First Amendment right to free speech is being violated if he cannot talk about his sexual orientation. He also claims his discharge is in violation of California state law, which prohibits discrimination in employment on the basis of sexual orientation. The tribunal's recommendation now goes to the 6th U.S. Army in San Francisco for ratification, and then to the National Guard Bureau and Army officials in Washington, D.C. for a final decision.
A gay rights group in Britain wrote to Queen Elizabeth II to ask for a royal pardon for the late playwright Oscar Wilde. The request is made on the 100th anniversary of his conviction and imprisonment for committing indecent acts with another man. The gay rights group pointed out to Queen Elizabeth that Wilde was made a criminal by laws which are now recognized by all democratic countries and civilized people as being a violation of human rights. A memorial service for gay victims of the Holocaust was disrupted recently at Jerusalem's Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial. Yad Vashem has a rule allowing anyone to hold memorials to Holocaust victims. Gays were singled out by the Nazis on racist theories similar to those used against Jews. Yad Vashem estimates that between 10,000 and 1 million homosexuals were killed. Protesters claimed that the memorial service was inappropriate because homosexuality is forbidden under Jewish religious law. But many Jewish leaders dispute the importance of such ancient writings. Shavak Weiss, a Holocaust survivor and Speaker of Israel's Knesset, spoke against the protest, saying Holocaust survivors should be sensitive to the suffering of gay men who were the guinea pigs for the final solution. Ontario, Canada is poised to compel private businesses to provide equal benefits to gay and straight couples. The province's Attorney General says a landmark civil rights bill will sweep discrimination against gays out of all provincial statutes by redefining marital status and banning the phrase opposite sex from the Family Law Act. If passed, Ontario's gay and lesbians would gain equal treatment in health, pension, adoption, and inheritance rights.
A hand-holding couple keeps the Denny's restaurant chain in the news for discrimination. Two men entered a Denny's restaurant in Los Angeles holding hands and were refused service. The couple is suing for $500,000. The men were ignored by the employees of the chain while other customers were served. Jokes were also made out loud to customers about the two men. The South Carolina-based chain awaits charges for violating civil rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and negligence. If you're used to seeing red ribbons worn on stages, get ready to see them on the playing fields. The San Francisco Giants will become the first Major League franchise to host an AIDS Awareness Day on July 31st. Team members will play with red ribbons on their uniforms, symbolizing AIDS awareness. The first 30,000 fans for the game against Colorado will receive a commemorative pin featuring the Giants logo and the logo of the Until There's a Cure Foundation. The Giants will also donate $1 from each ticket sold to AIDS research. The slogan, "Texas is like a whole other country," may just be true if some Galveston Republicans get their way. Galveston Republicans recently voted to quarantine people who are HIV positive. Party officials say the vote is a recommendation that will be taken to the state convention for possible consideration later this year. The act calls for a quarantine and the identification of individuals with the virus until a cure is found for AIDS. And now, restoring a little sanity to our otherwise hectic lives, we join Phil Byram with This Moment of Reason.
I'd like to talk to you about happy things, but once in a while, we have to talk about the lies. You've heard it said, I'm sure, that homosexuals are causing a decline in the American families. I decided I'd think about myself, my own neighborhood. You know, it's real strange, but I thought that family across the street was fighting all the time because the man's an alcoholic and he beats his wife up. Then the folks next door, they're always gone. Their kids run wild. They get up on the roof, they throw shingles, they pretend to be firefighters. They light a fire in their garage and then put it out and have great fun with it. I didn't know I was causing that either. You know, that teenager a couple doors down, I thought it was cocaine that was his problem. Now, I looked around and I looked around, and I would say maybe 9 out of 10 families on my block have something wrong with them. And then there's that one magic couple. Yellow house up on the corner. Nice Christian family. They go to church every Sunday, mother and father together with the 2 young kids, in their station wagon, of course. Nicest looking house on the block. They're always doing everything together. Do you suppose I'm the only one that knows he goes to a gay bar every Tuesday night? You know what? That's not true. And neither's the whole thing about homosexuals causing a decline in the American family. That is not true. Joe, Paula?
And that's it for this week's edition of Gay News Break. We hope you've enjoyed the show. I'm Paula Hand.
And I'm Joe Quigley.
And we'll see you next week.